Hello, everybody, and welcome to the June Be the Bank Real Estate Note broadcast here. We do this monthly. I'm your host, Justin Bogard. And today we're going to have Richard Thornton on again, and he is going to be talking about a pretty cool case study that he has. And I apologize for being on late today. I'm actually traveling. We're on vacation. I'll give you a little bit of more details of what's going on with us because, that's kind of cool. So stay tuned here, and we're going to be bringing on Richard, and we're going to be talking about this case study. Hi, Richard. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. You're a traveling man, and I understand you're trying to get everything together while you're traveling, and that's not always easy.
Yeah, we've been on vacation since the 27th of May, and we've been taking the camper to different cities across the Midwest, going to amusement parks and water parks, and went to a baseball game. We're actually going to a baseball game in Chicago tomorrow. We're going to see the White Sox and Dodgers play. And we're at a campsite right now, and the reception here is pretty poor. So if I cut in and out, I apologize to the listening audience. So Richard, you can kind of catch and paraphrase if I go in and out. But Richard's got the controls today for controlling the PowerPoint. So if there's any issues, we're going to blame it on Richard.
You're going to blame me. That's right.
So it's been fun. I actually had to hustle, so I apologize for our listening and viewing audience here that we're more than 10 minutes late getting the show started. I had some troubles transferring from a different city to where I'm at now in Chicago, and we had some heavy traffic, so I didn't get enough time to get my studio set up. So this is what happens. But I'm thankful that, with technology that we have today, Richard, that I can actually get on and actually do this from anywhere.
That's right. So tell us, you've been out for almost 2 weeks. What's the
Yep.
most interesting thing that's happened to you or that you've learned during this time away?
Wow. Being in close quarters with your two daughters and your dad, it can weigh on you a little bit. You love your family, but when you're in close quarters for that long, you got to have a little bit of space here and there. So I've learned that I have to step away sometimes and just take a moment. We all four of us need to do that, and that's what we've been doing. Is I take a few minutes away from each other, but then we bring them back together. So it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. A lot of great memories. We got a couple more days left to go till we have to go back to the office life, right? But right now we're kind of in vacation mode still, so I'm just excited that I can do this and hop on. And you told me a little bit about this case study, Richard, that we're going to bring on today, and you're going to drive most of the conversation today. And I'm going to kind of poke in there and ask some questions because honestly, I've only heard you talk about it a little bit, but I don't know all the details. So I'm kind of excited to learn about this. And if any of you are on YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook and you have any questions, please fill in the comment section, and we will actually answer those during the presentation today. And I think we had a hello from Edwin Rodriguez. So hello from Odessa, Texas. All right.
Right. So Justin, one thing I will add here is that we keep saying to people, you can do the note business from anywhere. And you are proving that. The good news is that you can do it from anywhere. The bad news is you can do it anywhere and anytime. And you've been interrupting because I know we've been texting back and forth, and you've been pricing deals while at odd hours. I'll get something at 1 o'clock in the morning my time, which means that you're pricing something for maybe you're trying to escape everybody in the camper or whatever. But that is the good news and the bad news of the story.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, hey, you and I are working really hard, and we have a lot of great opportunities in front of us. And you know what? If it interrupts my vacation for a little bit, it's okay, because we got some great case studies that we're going to show in the future here, Richard. We got a couple more hellos. We got a Wendy Bryson from Horsham, Pennsylvania. All right. I don't know where that's at, but that sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'd like to add, actually, we have more opportunities right now than we can buy. And so
Yeah.
I will say to people, if anybody out there thinks they want to buy a note, this is a great time because we've got enough to sell. So please dial 1-800-559-444422. No, dial either Justin's or my number, and we'll be glad to help you out.
All right. Vicky says hi. Hi, Vicky. And then we got Fly Level, who was from Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's a great place for some notes. I think we've had some notes there before, haven't we, Richard?
I've got a couple notes in that town, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. All right. So please feel free to say hi, reach in your comment section, and give us a shout if you want. We're happy to bring on your questions. Sometimes we save it till the very end, but I think today we'll probably bring up questions more often through Richard's case study, so that way, if we need to re-explain something, we can do that. So
you want to talk about sponsors now?
Yeah, we're going to transition into the slideshow, Richard. So I'll let you get your controls ready, and we'll just do a quick transition here. All right. See you in a few seconds.
Here are sponsors.
All right, Richard, let's go for it. All right. So this broadcast will not be possible without some sponsorship. So my company, Bright Path Notes, we've got the deal flow to make your cash flow as kind of our slogan. And you can reach out to me, Justin, at brightpathnotes.com if you're looking for any deal flow that Richard and I, like he said, we have a lot of deals going right now. So we'll be happy to share some of that with you. And our next sponsor is going to be, I believe it's CyREA. Yeah, it's our local REIA club, our Real Estate Investor Association club. And you can reach out to our executive director that you can see on the screen, executive director at cyrea.club. Our next sponsor is actually our note investing training. And you can reach out to info@brightpathnotes.com if you're interested in it. And it's called Constant Cash Flow. Richard and I have, and along with Larry Gill and Mariska Pilch, have kind of put out 25 to 30 videos on kind of the structure, the foundation, the kind of the introductory level and foundation of note investing. Even if you've bought a couple of notes, or if you invest in a couple of notes, or you never invested in notes, it's a great course to go into. I think you can get into it now, Richard, for less than $500. Like I said, you got like 25 plus videos. We have a couple case studies on there and a couple other things that we're bringing on in the future as well. So
and they get to see you and they get to see you and me even more. How about that?
That's right. They get more hearing from us talking.
Right? That's right.
Our last sponsorship is New View Trust Company. They're a self-directed, IRA company based out of Florida. I always forget what city they're in. I need to look at that. Anyways, reach out to new accounts at newviewira.com. I mentioned this broadcast, and they'll waive your setup fee. They do everything with self-directed IRAs. They do, the 401k, the solo 401k. They do the Roth IRAs. They do the Coverdale educational savings accounts. They do the HSAs. They cover all that stuff. Great company. We have a lot of people that we know that work with them, so we highly recommend them as well. This next slide here is the I'm going to call it the social media stuff for our local REIA club. They have a pretty cool YouTube channel. They got a lot of great videos on there from a lot of local people here. So if you shop in Indy, even if you're not into notes, it's just a great organization to be a part of, because there's a lot of boots on the ground here and a lot of people that can help you out if you get in a jam as well. If you get in a note jam, you can call me as well. So for those of you that want PHP credits, you just hover your smartphone over the screen here and pull out your camera. It will come up with a QR code, and then it will bring you to a web page, and you fill out your first and last name and email, I believe. So that's just for people in CyREA that need the PHP credits. That's what you can do there. So I was just told that Longwood, Florida is where New View IRA is. So thank you very much, Miss Vicky. Be the Bank is my podcast. Richard's been on it several times. Actually, Richard was on the last episode and the next episode that's going to air here, I believe, next Wednesday, episode 11 or 12. And you can download you can subscribe to this podcast on any of the podcast directories. We're on Stitcher, TuneIn. We're on Google Play. I forget the Google Podcast, the Apple Podcast, all that stuff. We're on there. Spotify, iHeartRadio. If you want to see the video version of it, you go to our Bright Path Notes YouTube channel, and you can see the video version of that as well. Next slide, please.
Next slide actually takes us to our case study,
Oh,
if that's where you want to go.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to paint the picture here. So, Richard, you had been telling me about this really cool case study that you did. You ran into a situation where you saw this note. You kind of laid out what the opportunities could be for yourself. You figured out different ways out of it and some things. You had some twists and turns throughout the way. And so I'm going to kind of let you start the conversation. And I'm going to jump in and kind of ask some questions here. And if I see any comments that pop up, I'm also going to bring them into the mix so we can answer them live during the presentation. So, Richard, go ahead and take this Cloverdale, California deal over.
Okay. So I'll back up by saying a little bit that the numbers are a little bit larger than probably most people are used to here. I was just lucky enough to have enough cash to take this down. But the theory is the same. You could do this with a smaller deal just as well as a larger deal. So as part of my constant marketing, I am in contact with a lot of different bank and trust officers. I do a little bit of hard money lending, and so they throw me their cast-off deals. And trust departments occasionally have clients with private notes who want to sell them or whatever, and they have no idea what to do with them. So in this case, I got a call from one of my trust department contacts, and they told me that their client had passed away within the last month. He had a number of different assets which they were selling off, and he also had 3 non-performing notes. Performing notes. They had no idea what to do with a private note. They knew of them, but they didn't know how they operated or how to dispose of them or anything. So they asked me for some assistance, and I said, sure, I'll be glad to help you out. So in March of 2021, they called saying just what I said, that they had a client that died, and he had 3 notes. Each of the notes was $200,000 to $350,000, interest only, and had a 2 to 5 year term. Did you have a question, Justin?
So interest only. So that means it's not really amortized over a period of time. It's actually the balloon of the entire principal balance that they got loaned is going to be due at the end of that term. Like you said, 2 to 5 years in your study. So I just wanted to point that out to our listening and viewing audience here. That was interest only as opposed to an amortized loan.
Right. And so these are classic private money loans. Okay. You would ask, well, why would somebody with a operating ongoing asset, the first 2 of these were on small apartment complexes, 10 to 15 units. And you'd really say, why would anybody want a private loan on something like that? Because the rates on these were 7.5%. And it's because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac both preclude owners from having additional multifamily loans after they've got, I think the record or the limit now is 4 loans for a private individual. Did you have a question?
No, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm just saying okay.
Okay. So these were on the first 2 on some nice little sort of sleepy apartment complexes that were operating just fine. And this third one was on the daycare. Now, the first 2 had terms that were far enough out so I could sell these. One of the biggest difficulties with this is that the bank trustees were chartered with maximizing their client's return. So I said, well, gee, I'll help you broker them. And they said, no, you'll either buy them yourself or tell us who can, because we can't pay a broker fee. So what does one do? One agrees to close on them on their own bank account and turn around and sell them immediately so that the 2 parties don't know what's going on. Perfectly legal. I held each one for the first 2. I held them for about 2 days and made pretty good. The first one was $200,000, and I think the other one was close to $300,000. Closed one, did it. And then once I got the proceeds back from that, turned around and did the other one and said, thanks very much. I had already arranged for a takeout with an investor. So before I submitted my bid to them, I included a healthy spread in there. And that's how I made my money on those two transactions.
So you had to get creative here. So this is your first kind of wrinkle in this deal, to where typically you could just say, I can price this loan out, but you can already have somebody ready to purchase it with their money, whether that's an institutional or a very accredited private individual that would take down the entire note. But then they told you what do you call them? The trustees?
Right.
So they said, no, Richard, we don't want to have a third party involved. We want to be B2B. We want to be directly to the person that's buying this, the actual buyer. So
right, because they had to maximize their profit to their clients. So they didn't want to pay any brokerage fees.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Richard had to get creative here, and it sounds like you had a couple options you could do. So in order to satisfy that specific clause in that agreement, you could either get some private money that wasn't known and you could borrow it for a short period of time, or you could use your own capital and you could go after it knowing that you could offload it within a day or two. Because after the transaction is over, the second it's over, it can still be offloaded to somebody else. So
right.
it wasn't a wrinkle, but it wasn't too big of a challenge, just because you have a big network and you kind of have people that can help take that down as well. So.
Right. So at that point, it was, once I own it, I own it. It's just like buying a car. Once you buy the car, you can do anything with it you'd like. And I also should add here, if you have your own practice, it's very good to build up a home equity line. Yeah. Or your bank account, work with your bank. And even though they might say, well, gee, we'll give you a line of credit for $25,000 now, but we'll add to it after a year or something like that, to go ahead and start using these things. Because in this instance, I could take a $25,000 line that I had with my bank and sort of add it in there. And I had to raise less from investors and things like that. And you sort of cobble it together and you've got enough money to close the deal.
So you said you had 3 notes that you looked at and you just bought one of the 3, correct?
I bought I bought 2. Well, I bought all 3 eventually, but okay. With what I just described, I bought the first one for $200,000. Closed on it and sold it, and then turned right around as soon as I got funded, bought the next one for $300,000, and closed on it and sold it. And then I had all my money back in my pocket again.
Okay. So you just used the same money and just repeat and rinse 3 times.
Exactly.
So you didn't have to come together with whatever the total price was all at once. You just had to come together with the smaller one, then you kind of built up from there, it sounds like.
Right. I have to say that I was chagrined in that I would have made probably 4 times as much had I been able to pull down close to $1 million and close all of these myself. I would have had a extremely handsome profit, but I couldn't do that. So, you can, I'm not going to cry about it. I did the best I could.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry. Continue. So we're at the 3rd mark there. The daycare note matured.
Right. So we're at the 3rd transaction, and all this time, while I had been negotiating on these others, I had been trying to get financing for the daycare. So I was they weren't allowing me to get a brokerage fee, but in this instance, I could get paid if I could arrange another private money lender. I could get paid from that private money lender, so it was the same to them. And this one had a long enough. Had too short a maturity. They started talking to me in August. You have to remember that we're in the middle of COVID at this point, so everything is moving at a snail's pace. People are trying to operate out of their house. They're not going into the office. They're trying to get things signed. They can't. I mean, we're like, dealing in molasses here. So on August 30th of 2021, the daycare note was set to mature. And I had two lenders signed up who had given bids that would have worked just fine for the borrower, but they didn't really like the bids. They were too expensive, or there was some wrinkle that they did not like them. So they dragged their feet, thinking that there might be some way, miraculously for them to pull this out. I have to say that, quite frankly, they were naive and weren't all that financially savvy, and that's part of the reason they dragged their feet on this. But August 30th came and went. The loan matured, and it was now officially in default. They had kept their payments current, even though the daycare had been shut down since March 1st, which is when the COVID shutdown happened here in California. They hadn't paid taxes, they hadn't done a whole bunch of other things, but they very wisely kept current on their mortgage payments. So I got bids, as I said, from these other two notes, sold them, and arranged for the private monies to take them out. I'm a little bit ahead of my slides here. So we come along in September, October, and not much has happened after we closed the first two, and the entire family of the owner-operator of the daycare's family gets COVID. They don't all get it at once. They get one here and one there, and all this type of thing. So the bank trustee department talks with the heirs, and they say, all right, times are tough. We understand. We'll delay. So they delay. And they delay into the holidays, and then we get the holidays, and things went from slow to even slower. So nothing's happening all this time. The bank couldn't legally collect its payments, and they were just kind of putting along. The borrowers at this point, I think, were starting to search around and find some financing. But as far as we can see, not a whole lot was happening. So I suddenly saw an opportunity for me to just buy the note rather than refinance it. Now it was a completely defaulted note that you and I both very much know how to deal with. The heirs were starting post-holidays to call them weekly and say, where are money? So the bank was starting to feel some pressure. And they really didn't know what to do with this note now. Not only did they not know what to do with the private note, they had no idea what to do with the defaulted private note. So the coupon value of this, or face amount value, because this was, as you said earlier, a interest-only loan, was $350,000. So I submitted a bid for $300,000, and they immediately accepted it. And I told them we could close in 30 days, and they were very, very happy.
Let me jump in here real quick.
Sure.
So they have a defaulted loan because they couldn't make payments because of the COVID situation. So after they went past the default date, which should be about 30 days after their last payment, the bank said they weren't allowed to collect any payments because it's past due and the taxes weren't being paid. Is that correct?
Correct. So no payments would or could be made beyond that last 30 days.
Okay. And then the the current unpaid balance when it was presented to you at the time you were ready to submit your bid was $350,000. Is that correct?
Correct. It was an interest-only loan, so the principal balance had never changed.
Oh, that's right. These were interest-only loans. Okay. Yes, I missed that.
Right.
So $300,000 is your bid to the bank trustee. I'm regurgitating what you said because I think you're
fine.
Out on my side as well. And so you offered $300,000 to buy that $350,000 interest-only note at 6% interest only. Or was it 7%?
It was 7%. Yes. So what I determined was that if I could find an investor and sell it or refinance it, more importantly. I knew I had two lenders, two investors that were quite willing to. They knew the asset, they knew the daycare, and they were comfortable with the fact that even though they had gone beyond their maturity date and were in technical default, they knew that they could fill the daycare back up and operate it just fine, and have a performing asset. So they weren't very concerned about that, like maybe somebody else would be. So I knew that if I could at least bring one of them in, I had a $50,000 profit.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So what we didn't know is that post the holidays, the borrower had actually been approached by another broker who offered to find them financing, just as I had done. And he did that quite successfully. Thank you very much. And they called the bank about a week before we were set to close and said, hey, we'd like to give you a full payoff. But at that point, the bank couldn't accept it because they were already under contract with me to close. And so they directed them to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, as you know, when you buy a non-performing note, and I actually think that we should have several sessions for everybody on non-performing notes because they can be fun, and they're fun puzzles if you like that.
Right.
There was what's called arrearages, which means that those arrearages are usually unpaid mortgage payments, taxes that had to be paid, liens that satisfied, or anything like that that needs to be brought current for the property to be owned free of any liens and free and clear. In this case, the bank, as of 12/31/21, did have to pay the taxes. So they paid an extra $13,000 in taxes, plus they were owed another $13,000 or $14,000 in payments. So those two actually totaled $26,724. So when
that's the cherry on top of the 350.
Right. So when you buy a defaulted note like that, you get to the law. Well, as long as it says it's in the note, and that's something you have to be very clear to, or very you have to really watch out for and clarify, is that you get to collect the principal balance and all the arrearages, which was the case with this note. So that meant I got to collect the original 350 plus the 26,724. So I got to collect $76,724,000, and that's the demand note that I gave to the title company for $376,724.
2 questions.
2 weeks later, they closed escrow.
I got 2 questions for you.
Sure.
Real quick before you get to the closed escrow.
That's all right.
So, one of them was, you mentioned the bank trustees, since they held the paper, or they were the current lender at the time before you actually closed on it, they had to advance the $13,000 in delinquent taxes on December 31st, 2021.
Right. They had to advance them, even though they hadn't made the loan themselves. They had to advance them on behalf of their now dead trustee client and his heirs. They were telling them, which was the case, look, we've got the situation, we have it resolved. This has got to come out of your proceeds to get this resolved. And so the heirs just had to, they had the right to do that under their agreement, under their trust agreement.
So that $13,000 that the bank advanced, did they get paid back during this transaction?
The heirs paid that, yes. The bank didn't lose any money.
Outside of the $376,724, the heirs also had to come up with $13,000 to satisfy the bank's additional advances.
Yes, they had to forego the 13,000 plus of payments they were due. Plus, before any proceeds were dispersed to them, the bank had to be repaid its $13,724 for taxes.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Sorry. That was
Right.
the one question. And my second question, I already forgot what it was. So go ahead and move to your escrow.
Well, that's all right. So we've got so my demand notice was for $376,724. Escrow company told the borrower that's what they had to pay. They agreed that they owed that much money in terms of back taxes and unpaid mortgage payments. And they paid that amount at escrow and cut me a check. So it had taken me almost a year of following the deal to get it done. But essentially my money was only up for 2 weeks and I made $76,700.
That's an awesome case study. So your first little wrinkle, just to revisit this case study, was that you couldn't just straight up broker the deal to an institutional buyer or let's say a large one or two private investors. You had to figure out a way around that to satisfy them not paying a brokerage fee per se. And when we say brokerage fee in our business, we just mean a commission to somebody that's a third party. So in their eyes, they had to see it as using, let's say, Richard's money,
Right.
Close the sale. So you were able to stick with this deal because that didn't scare you off. You were able to finagle that part of it. The second part of it was great also the third or fourth part of it. Let's say the fourth part of it was great to fast forward about the paperwork you signed that said you are in a transaction with the bank trustees to where they can't really shop this around and you can't really shop this around either. You guys are in a committed agreement to where you're both trying to execute this as you, the buyer, and then the seller, and anybody trying to come in between can't breach that agreement, correct?
Yeah, I was under contract with them, just as you and I often are when we are doing our due diligence, that said that I will buy this and for price X, in this case, $300,000, unless my due diligence shows anything to the contrary. This is to why I should not. I was into my underwriting period. They had no way to wiggle out of it. So since they were under contract with me, the borrower had to deal with me as opposed to the bank.
Which is perfect because even though that borrower went and tried to take care of the situation with another person, they couldn't get in between you. So that was great that they had to deal with you. So someone else did all the work for you as far as getting them financing to pay off this debt. And you just sat there and said, yep, that's great. That's one less thing I got to do.
That's right. I mean, I had already done that, so I had two lenders in the wings, and that's why I went ahead and closed on this. But yes, essentially that was the case.
That is awesome. Well, we'll consider this one kind of a home run. I'm going to say, Richard, from the perspective of listening to the entire story. Now, this was a great case study that was a performer / non-performer, but you stuck with it. This is what's great about note investing, Richard, is that you didn't really let these hurdles get in the way. You just kind of, as you always say, it's a puzzle, and you figure out where those last puzzle pieces are. Usually you start with the corners, right, and you kind of work your way in towards the middle. You don't really start in the middle. And so you figured out a way around this to make this I won't say an easy sale, because you said it took you about a year to go from conversation to actually closing all three of them. Is that right?
Yeah, it did, and it changed the entire way. I mean, it was going to be, first off, it was going to be just a straight refi of this third deal and find another lender, and then oops, we went into a non-performing situation, and basically everything changed. So
if anybody has any questions about that along the way, I didn't see any new comments pop up in the last couple of minutes, but by all means, chime in if something didn't make sense or if you wanted us to repeat what happened. I know we kind of went fast and maybe some people aren't as seasoned as we are on this call right now. We're happy to go back. We just wanted to walk through the deal and just make sure we hit the highlights of it, and we can actually step back and Richard can kind of go into some more details that he didn't go into currently. So feel free to use the comment section if you have any comments.
We probably confused everybody.
Yeah. These deals are kind of cool. Yes. in California, prices are a lot different than they are in the Midwest. So this is probably a low valued loan, considering in what city are we talking about? Cloverdale, you said?
Yeah, Cloverdale is a little town of about population 10,000 in Northern California, up in wine country. This house, you probably didn't notice it from the picture, but was built in 1910. It's actually a two bedroom, one bath house with a huge yard, and was quite nice for daycare, because they built playground equipment and all sorts of things like that around it. And so it was perfect for daycare, very accessible. I think you can assume that in the California wine country, in a nice little town, you're probably going to have enough demand for a nice little daycare.
Okay. So something that just popped up in my mind, just to make sure that I was clear in understanding about the borrower and how there were errors involved. So the original borrower on this promissory note, was that the person that passed away?
The person that passed away was the lender. So the trustee, the lender had made all three of these loans. He made two of them to two different apartment owners, and the third one to this daycare family.
Okay, so the lender was a private individual,
right?
Not a company, correct? Okay, and that lender, the default to the mechanism for someone else to come in and enforce this note is the bank trustee that this money went through. Right,
and so if you are marketing to trustees, I won't try and say that everybody should. Two things. Not everybody should go out and market trustees and expect to get a whole bunch of transactions at once. This is the kind of situation where you keep in front of people, you call them every 60 days, or you send them an email that just reminds them that they're there. And it's kind of like fishing with a net. All of a sudden you get something and they call you seemingly out of the blue, because you don't know what's going on in their life. You don't want to be a pest and over market them. You just want to let them know that you're out there. And more often than not, they're going to have a client that has a note, that decides they want to sell it, and they're going to call you to say, do you know how, can you help us dispose of this? And so it's something like that, number one. Number two, you have to see this as what I call a windfall deal. As you know, I was a commercial lender for a number of years, and there were probably, over my 20-year career, there were probably 8, maybe 9, what I'd call windfall deals that went along like this, and for whatever reason transpired, and I got anywhere from a $70,000 to a $200,000 profit off of it. You can't count on those. They're not a business model. It's just something that's the good side of what happens to us when we're playing the game, because you're going to have some defaults and some bad side stuff too. So yeah, you have to have some things that balance it out.
Richard, let's transition here into our Q&A and our kind of after party here, because I have some more questions that I want to ask you.
Sounds good.
All right. One thing you always tell me, Richard, and the word always sticks with me, is in this business, you got to have tenacity.
Right.
I think this deal shows your tenacity and how you approached it. Yes, you've been in the business for a while. You have a lot of connections. You're local there in certain areas of California, so people do know you. And I think that's the reason why some of these deals get in front of you, just like some of these deals come in front of me, because I'm from Indiana and stuff like that. So the tenacity I thought was great about this deal, how you pushed through. It did take you a year to go from start to finish, but one key thing you point on, but you didn't touch on too much, was the fact that you only had your money out there for 2 weeks.
That's right.
So yes, you started the conversation a year ago, and it extended and it changed and back and forth, and you spent a lot of time on it. Of course, the payday was excellent, right? But I think the key factor was you only had your money out of your bank account for 2 weeks. So the return, that cash on cash return of that small period of time is just that is an amazing return. Even if it was a few $1,000s, it's just an amazing return on your for having it out there. So you could have had it working in other places and doing other things, and then all of a sudden you had it for 2 weeks and it was out there and it came back, and that's just an amazing return, Richard. So clap.
Well, that's not the reason I thought it would be good to bring it on. There's a lot of different teaching aspects to this transaction in terms of being flexible, in terms of being able to mix up your game and realize opportunities. And so whether the dollar amount's big or small is sort of irrelevant.
Yeah. So in your part of the country, obviously the dollar amounts are going to be a different size than what I'm dealing with usually in kind of Midwest. We'll call them just blue collar areas where the prices are typically under $150,000 pretty commonly. And what you see probably is your floor is probably 200,000. Yeah.
For the most part, yes. And I broker a lot of those deals.
Yeah.
So I'll broker them straight to an investor, just like I mentioned on the first two. I'll get all the deal factors. I'll talk to some different investors. I'll find out what they will pay, and I'll cut myself in for a $10,000 to $15,000 spread. And if I can sell it buy it at that price, then yahoo.
Okay. Drew hopped on here for a quick minute, and he wanted to send a question in. So he says, how would the returns have been better, different, had you been able to fund all three at the same time? I think you lightly touched on this in the beginning, but let's go ahead and expand on that because that's a great point.
Well, good. Leave it to Drew to ask that question. But, yeah. So I sold, the first note was about a $200,000 note. And I'm just going from memory here. I sold that for about $160,000. So I would have made $40,000 alone just on the first note. I would have made slightly more than that, about $50,000 on the second note, and then I would have made this. So that would have been what, $90,000 on top of the $76,000. So by not being able to pull in that amount of money, I significantly killed my returns. Now, I wouldn't have been able to collect that all at once because one of them paid off, June of this year, would have paid off this month, and the other would have paid off next June of next year, those first two loans. But nevertheless, that would be $166,000 on a roughly $300,000 investment.
And this is why real estate investing mentors always preach on the fact that you should always have avenues at which you can get money quickly and have a lot of different ways to get capital quickly. So that's another reason why real estate investors have a lot of private money available, and they leverage a lot of different bank techniques and different credit card techniques and stuff to get those quick returns. Because if you need to borrow money for a couple of weeks, I'm willing to pay a pretty hefty interest rate, knowing that I can pay it off in a couple of weeks. Right, Richard?
Right. And I can't, sing the praises of having a HELOC, a home equity loan, high enough. If you can go ahead and arrange something like that, say you're living in a $500,000 house, you can get a $300,000 home equity loan or something like that. That's gold because you don't have to pay for it if you don't use it. In this instance, if I had one, I don't have one. Probably should consider that, right? Anyway, I don't have one.
After this deal came in front of you, you probably should consider that.
That's a good idea. At any rate, if I had one, I would have been able to take down that much more myself and only have it out for 2 or 3 weeks. Even if I had it out for the full year on a home equity loan, I probably would have been paying 5%. And I was going to get those returns. So it was kind of no contest.
Right. Wow. It's a great deal. Great question, Drew. Thanks for bringing it up. I actually cut you off on the presentation. I just realized that a little bit early. If you don't mind, let's pull that back up real quick because I have a few things I need to show the audience here.
Okay, I closed the presentation, so you have to let me open it up again.
There's always a technical difficulty with us, it seems like.
Yeah,
Every broadcast that we do.
that's right.
I believe the next, while you're pulling that up, I believe the next time we're going to have our broadcast is Wednesday, July 13th. I believe that's the second Wednesday of July. That's the next time we will be on. And we'll probably keep the same theme going of showing you a case study that's just relevant or new that came up to us that we'd like to talk about. If you guys have any opportunities to where you have notes and mortgages, deeds of trust, land contract, contract for deeds, anything that you want us to kind of review and kind of price to buy from you, we can do that and give you a brokerage fee as well. Or if you just want our help with it, you can do that as well. So do you have a question, Richard?
Which slide did you want to see?
It's a slide that has the barcode on it that shows how to submit an offer to us. We've had a few people do that last month, and it worked.
Can you see that now?
I cannot. It's not shared within our program here.
All right, I've got to do it again here. Let's see. Okay, so now do you see my blue screen?
I see a blue screen, yeah.
All right, so now
you got to have the microphone show up.
How about that?
That's perfect. Okay.
Okay.
This is where you can take your smartphone out and you can hover over this QR code. If you need the actual link, you can email me at info@brightpathnotes.com. I'll send it to you. But anyways, this will get you to a page to where you can fill out the form and give us the details of the deal you have in front of you. Whether you want us to buy it or whether you want us to kind of help you underwrite it, we can do that as well. Send all that stuff to us, even lease options if you want as well. Make sure it's a first lien, though. Preferably residential. We can do commercial, but we prefer residential. And make sure it's a first lien. Okay, Richard, hit that one more slide, I believe. And yeah, okay, July 13th, 6 to 8 p.m. Wednesday, July 13th, 6 to 8 p.m. is the next broadcast we're going to have. Justin at brightpathnotes.com to contact me, or you can contact Richard at amnotecap.com. And I think we cleared out the comment board, Richard. Great questions today. But thank you for all the highs. We haven't had that many highs in a while, so we appreciate that, letting us know where you guys are from. And until then, Richard, man, have a great rest of your week, your weekend, and I'll be talking to you soon. And for everybody else on the call, I will see you guys next July.
Great. Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
All right, guys. See ya.
Bye.